You know, some days I still wake up in a cold sweat, replaying every single word, every threatening gesture, every calculated move in my head. It's been months, but the fear, the anger, and ultimately, the chilling satisfaction of what I did still linger like a phantom limb. I still find myself asking, was I wrong for taking things into my own hands? For not just defending my husband, but utterly dismantling the man who tried to destroy us? Tell me, honestly, if you were in my shoes, if someone threatened to expose the deepest, darkest secret of the person you loved most, would you have just rolled over and taken it? Or would you have flipped the script so hard it left them reeling? Because that's exactly what I did, and I don't regret a single second of it. It all started so innocently, as these things always do, don't they? My husband, Mark, and I had built a life together that most people only dream of. We met in college, a whirlwind romance that somehow, against all odds, matured into a solid, unwavering partnership. He was my rock, my confidant, the person who made me laugh even on the toughest days. We had a beautiful home, 2 spirited golden retrievers, and careers that, while demanding, allowed us to live comfortably. Mark was a software engineer, brilliant and a bit introverted, his mind always buzzing with algorithms and code. I worked in marketing, a natural people person, balancing his quiet thoughtfulness with my more outgoing nature. We were, by all accounts, perfectly matched. Our 10-year anniversary was fast approaching, and we were planning a trip to Italy, a dream vacation we'd been saving for since we first said, I do. Life felt perfect, almost too perfect, in that way that always makes you wonder when the other shoe is going to drop. And drop it did, with a sickening, earth-shattering thud. The first sign of trouble was subtle, a flicker in Mark's eyes that I, attuned to his every mood, immediately picked up on. He started coming home later, claiming extra work at the office, which wasn't entirely out of character for him, especially when a big project was due. But there was a tension in his shoulders, a slight tremor in his hands when he thought I wasn't looking. He was distracted, often lost in thought, and his usually hearty laugh became strained, almost forced. I tried to talk to him, of course. Everything okay, honey? You seem a little preoccupied. I'd ask gently, trying not to push. He'd always brush it off, a quick smile, a reassuring squeeze of my hand. Just work stuff, babe. Nothing to worry about. Big deadline next week. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But my gut, that pesky, intuitive part of me, kept screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. Then came the anonymous emails. They started appearing in my inbox, seemingly random at first, from an address I didn't recognize. The subject lines were innocuous enough. Hello, a quick thought, regarding your future. I almost deleted them without opening, thinking they were spam. But something, again, that nagging intuition, made me click on the third one. It was a single line of text. Your husband has a secret, and it's about to cost him everything. My blood ran cold. I immediately thought it was a prank, some sick joke from a disgruntled colleague of mine or Mark's. But the specificity, your husband, sent a shiver down my spine. I scrolled through the other 2 emails. The first simply said, TikTok. The second, the truth always comes out. My hands were shaking as I reread them. I showed them to Mark that evening, trying to sound calm, but my voice wavered. His face, usually so composed, went ashen. He stared at the screen, his pupils dilating with something akin to terror. Who would do this? He whispered, his voice barely audible. I don't know, I said, trying to reassure him, though my own heart was pounding. It's probably just a troll. We should ignore it. But deep down I knew. He knew. This wasn't a troll. This was real. And Mark knew exactly what secret they were talking about. For the next few days, we lived under a cloud of unspoken dread. Mark became even more withdrawn, his eyes haunted. He spent hours on his laptop in his study, the door usually open, now firmly shut. I heard fragments of hushed phone calls, his voice low and urgent, but he'd always hang up abruptly if I came too close. The emails continued, escalating in their menace. They stopped being vague. They started mentioning specific dates, specific names, specific events. Events from Mark's past, long before we met. Things he had never spoken about. I tried again to get him to open up, to tell me what was going on. "Mark, please," I pleaded one evening, sitting on the edge of our bed, tears welling in my eyes. "Whatever it is, we can face it together. Just tell me." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain so profound it almost broke my heart. "I can't," he choked out, turning away. "I can't tell you. You wouldn't understand. You wouldn't forgive me." His words were like a physical blow. Not forgive him? What could be so bad? My mind raced through every possible scenario, each one more horrifying than the last. Was it another woman? Was it something illegal? My imagination, fueled by fear, went wild. Then came the demand. It arrived in an email, clear as day, no more veiled threats. "Give me $500,000 or your wife, your boss, and the entire internet will know about your little incident from '08. My blood ran cold. $500,000. That was nearly our entire savings, everything we had painstakingly built over a decade. And incident from '08. I looked at Mark, holding the phone out to him, my hand shaking so violently I could barely keep it steady. He read it, and his face crumbled. He sank onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands, silent sobs racking his body. "Who is it, Mark?" I demanded, my voice sharp with a mixture of fear and growing anger. "Tell me. We can go to the police." He shook his head vehemently. "No. We can't. You don't understand. If this gets out, everything we have, it's all gone. My career, our life, everything." He finally looked up at me, his eyes red and swollen. "His name is Derek. Derek Thorne. He was involved in it too." The story that unfolded from Mark, hesitantly, painfully, was even worse than I had imagined. It wasn't an affair. It wasn't even strictly illegal, at least not in the way I'd feared. It was something far more insidious, something that preyed on shame, on youthful indiscretion, on a moment of profound weakness. Back in 2008, when Mark was a junior in college, struggling with immense pressure from his family and a demanding computer science program, he'd fallen in with the wrong crowd. A group of guys who frequented underground poker games, mostly harmless, but often involving large sums of money. Mark, always brilliant, had quickly picked up on card counting and other strategies. He was good, too good. He started winning a lot. And then, one night, fueled by alcohol and a desperate need to prove himself, he cheated. Not just a little, but blatantly, using a prearranged signal with another player to collude. They were caught. Not by the police, but by the organizer of the game, a notoriously ruthless individual who had connections that made going to the authorities seem like a picnic. Derek Thorne was that other player. He was also the one who, in a desperate attempt to save his own skin, had offered to frame Mark as the sole instigator, the mastermind of the entire scheme, in exchange for a lighter punishment from the organizer. Mark, terrified and alone, had taken the fall. He'd been forced to sign a confession, accepting full responsibility, and had to pay a substantial sum to avoid further, more physical, repercussions. The organizer had warned him, "One word of this to anyone and you'll regret it." Derek, seeing an opportunity, had saved his own copy of the signed confession, along with a stack of incriminating photos from that night. Photos of Mark, looking disheveled, guilty, surrounded by stacks of cash, with Derek himself conveniently out of frame. He'd kept them, all these years, waiting for the perfect moment. Mark, ashamed and traumatized, had buried the memory, never telling a soul, convinced that if it ever came out, his reputation, his future, would be shattered. He'd rebuilt his life, meticulously, becoming the man I knew and loved. And now, Derek Thorne, the vulture, had reappeared, ready to pick at his bones. My initial reaction was a burning rage, not just at Derek, but a little bit at Mark too, for keeping such a monumental secret from me. How could he not trust me enough to tell me? But as I looked at his broken face, his eyes pleading for understanding, the anger softened into a fierce protectiveness. This wasn't just about a secret, This was about a predator trying to destroy an innocent life. Our life. We were a team. We would face this together. We're not giving him a single cent, I declared, my voice firm, a newfound resolve hardening my features. Mark looked at me, surprised. But what about the photos? The confession? My job? My reputation? We'll figure it out, I said, a plan, vague but determined, already beginning to form in my mind. But we are not letting this man win. The next day, I started my research. I wasn't just going to sit back and wait for Derek Thorne to make his next move. I was going to find out everything there was to know about him. My marketing skills, my ability to dig for information, to connect disparate pieces of data, usually reserved for understanding consumer behavior, were now fully deployed in a far more personal battle. I started with public records, his address, his past employment, any criminal records, anything. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each one revealing a more unsavory truth. Derek Thorne wasn't just a former college acquaintance. He was a serial schemer. He had a history of petty cons, a pattern of taking advantage of others, a string of unpaid debts, and a reputation for being a manipulative opportunist. He'd worked a few low-level jobs but never held anything stable. His social media profiles, while carefully curated, hinted at a lifestyle he clearly couldn't afford, full of borrowed glamour and exaggerated claims. This man wasn't just trying to blackmail Mark. This was his lifestyle. He was likely doing this to others or had done it in the past. The thought filled me with a cold fury. I found out he lived alone in a small apartment on the outskirts of the city, not far from where Mark and I lived, which made my stomach clench. He drove an old, beat-up car, and his online footprint, while present, was also surprisingly thin, almost as if he was trying to hide something himself. And that, I realized, was my leverage. Everyone has a secret, even the blackmailer. The question was, what was Derek Thorne's? I dove deeper, using every trick I knew, every open-source intelligence gathering technique I could think of. I cross-referenced his social media contacts with known associates, looked for any mentions of past disputes, any whispers of scandal. It was painstaking work, hours spent hunched over my laptop, the screen illuminating my grim determination in the dead of night. Mark, still reeling from the shock, initially tried to dissuade me. "It's too dangerous, honey," he'd say, his voice thick with worry. "Let's just pay him. It'll be over." But I knew, with absolute certainty, that it wouldn't be over. Derek Thorne would just come back for more and more until he'd bled us dry. We had to fight back. We had to break his pattern. My breakthrough came unexpectedly through a seemingly innocuous comment on an old community forum. Someone had posted about a missing package from an online order, and Derek had commented vaguely about having experienced similar delivery issues with a particular courier company. It was a throwaway line, but it sparked something in my mind. Why would he specifically mention that courier? I started digging into local news archives, police blotters, anything related to that courier, and any past incidents. And then I found it. A small article, buried deep in a local paper from a few years back, about a series of package thefts from delivery trucks in a specific neighborhood. The description of the culprit was vague, but one detail stood out: a distinctive, bright blue baseball cap. And in one of Derek's old, publicly visible photos on his sparsely updated Facebook, there he was, wearing that exact same bright blue baseball cap. It was a long shot, a huge leap, but my intuition screamed at me. This was it. I needed more. I needed proof, something concrete. The article mentioned surveillance footage, but it was inconclusive at the time. I started looking for any recent news about that particular courier company, any internal investigations, anything that might have resurfaced. My search led me to an archived police report that detailed a recent cold case review of those package thefts. New forensic technology had allowed them to enhance some of the old surveillance footage. And there, clearly, was Derek Thorne. Not just the cap, but his gait, his distinctive way of holding his shoulders, even a slight limp I'd noticed from one of his more recent social media videos. He was caught red-handed, in high definition, stuffing packages into the trunk of that old, beat-up car he still drove. The thefts were minor in isolation, but together, they amounted to grand larceny, A serious felony. He'd gotten away with it for years. And now I had the evidence. Not only that, but the police report also detailed a witness who had seen him and then received a threat from him to keep quiet. That witness, a retired postal worker, had recently come forward again, reinvigorated by the cold case review, to confirm her initial suspicions. Derek Thorne hadn't just been a petty thief, he'd been a criminal who intimidated witnesses. I had him. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here was this man, Derek Thorne, who had stalked my husband for years, who was now actively trying to extort us, to ruin everything we had built, all based on a youthful mistake Mark had made under due duress. And now, I had uncovered his own hidden criminal past, far more serious than anything Mark had ever done. Before I tell you what happened next, what I actually did, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have gone to the police? Would you have tried to negotiate? Or would you have, like me, decided it was time to play hardball, to turn the tables on the blackmailer? I stared at the screen, the police report, the enhanced surveillance stills, all the irrefutable evidence of Derek Thorne's guilt, glowing in the darkness of our study. Mark was asleep in our bed, oblivious to the storm brewing. My heart was pounding, a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. I could go to the police. I could hand over everything I had, and Derek Thorne would be arrested. But that still left Mark's secret hanging in the air. The blackmailer's leverage gone. Yes, but the confession, the photos, they still existed. Derek could still, out of spite, release them before his arrest, or after, through some prearranged dead man switch. No, going to the police was too risky. I needed to ensure Mark's secret stayed buried, forever. I needed to not just neutralize Derek Thorne, but eliminate his power over us completely. I needed to flip the script, not just defensively, but offensively. I sent Derek Thorne an email the next morning. It was short, concise, and utterly devoid of emotion. Derek, I wrote, I know about the package thefts. I know about the enhanced surveillance footage. I know about the witness. I have copies of everything. Meet me at the Old Mill Coffee Shop, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Come alone. If you don't show, or if you bring anyone, or if you try anything, the police will have everything I have. And trust me, what I have is far more damning than anything you have on Mark. I attached a single, blurry still from the enhanced surveillance footage, just enough to show him I wasn't bluffing, enough to spark fear. I didn't wait for a reply. I knew he'd be there. The next morning, I walked into the coffee shop, my heart a drum in my chest, but my posture radiating an icy calm. I had dressed impeccably, a sharp business suit, my hair pulled back, every detail designed to convey authority and control. I spotted him immediately. He looked exactly as I'd imagined, disheveled, nervous, his eyes darting around the room. He was sitting at a corner table, nursing a lukewarm coffee, his face pale. I walked directly to his table and sat down without a word. He flinched, his eyes wide with surprise and a dawning dread. So, you came, I said, my voice low and steady, belying the hurricane of emotions swirling inside me. He swallowed hard. Who are you? I'm Mark's wife, I replied, a small, humorless smile playing on my lips. And I know everything. His face went even paler. What do you want? He stammered. I want your silence, I said, leaning forward slightly, my eyes locked on his. And I want every single piece of evidence you have on my husband. The confession, the photos, everything. You're going to delete it all, right now, in front of me. And then, you're going to disappear from our lives forever. He scoffed, a nervous, bravado-filled sound. Or what? You'll tell the cops about a few stolen packages? That's nothing compared to what I have on Mark. He'll lose everything. Really? I raised an eyebrow, a hint of steel in my voice. Let's compare notes, shall we? Mark's incident from 2008 was a college mistake, fueled by desperation and youth, a situation he was coerced into. It would be embarrassing, yes, but hardly career-ending, especially with the right legal defense pointing out the duress and how you framed him. Yours, however, Derek, is an ongoing pattern of grand larceny, witness intimidation, and potentially obstruction of justice. The police have been looking for you for years. They have you on enhanced surveillance footage clear as day. They have a witness who's finally brave enough to testify. They even have your distinct blue baseball cap. And I have all of it. A detailed file, ready to go. I can send it with one click. I pulled out a small, unmarked USB stick from my purse and placed it on the table. This contains everything. The police report, the enhanced stills, the witness statement, even a recording of our conversation right now, just for good measure. If you don't comply, this goes straight to Detective Miller at Precinct 3. He's very eager to close this cold case, I hear. I watched his face. The bravado melted away, replaced by pure, unadulterated fear. His eyes flickered to the USB, then back to my face, searching for a crack in my composure. There was none. "You're bluffing," he whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" I leaned back, crossing my arms, a predatory calm settling over me. "Try me. You have two choices, Derek. You can walk out of here, delete everything, and vanish. Or you can spend the next 5 to 10 years in prison with a nice, shiny felony on your record, while Mark and I continue with our perfectly happy lives, knowing we got rid of a parasite like you. The choice is yours. But I promise you, if you choose the latter, I will make sure they throw the book at you. Every single package. Every single threat. I have nothing to lose, Derek. I have my husband, and I will protect him with everything I have. What do you have?" He looked down at his hands, trembling. The reality of his situation was finally sinking in. He, the blackmailer, was now being blackmailed. He, the hunter, had become the hunted. After a long, agonizing silence, he finally looked up, defeat etched on his face. "Okay," he croaked. "Okay. What do I have to do?" I dictated the terms precisely. He was to take out his phone right there in front of me and delete every single email, every photo, every document he had related to Mark. Then he was to go home and permanently delete them from his computer, from any cloud storage, from everywhere. I watched him like a hawk, ensuring he didn't miss a single thing. He deleted the emails first, his fingers fumbling. Then the photos. I made him empty his trash bin, then watched him perform a hard delete, explaining in detail what he was doing. When he was finished, he showed me his empty folders, his eyes hollow. "Now, you're going to confirm in writing," I said, pulling out a pre-typed document from my purse. It was a simple, legally sound statement, acknowledging that he had destroyed all materials related to Mark and agreed to never contact either of us again. It stated that he understood any breach of this agreement would result in immediate criminal prosecution based on evidence I held. He signed it, his hand shaking so badly, the pen almost slipped. "And one more thing," I added, as he stood to leave, looking utterly broken. "If I ever hear your name again, or if anything surfaces about Mark's past, or if you so much as breathe in our direction, that USB goes to Detective Miller. Understand?" He nodded, unable to meet my gaze. He simply turned and walked out of the coffee shop, a shell of the man who had tried to destroy my family. The aftermath was slow, but profoundly healing. Mark was in disbelief when I told him what I had done. He hugged me tightly, tears streaming down his face, a mixture of relief, awe, and a touch of fear at the ferocity I had shown. He finally opened up completely, confessing every detail of his past, every fear, every regret. And I listened, I understood, and I forgave. It wasn't about the past anymore, it was about the present and our future. We never heard from Derek Thorne again. He vanished, presumably choosing to live in obscurity rather than face the consequences of his actions. The peace that settled over our home was palpable, a lightness we hadn't realized we'd lost until it returned. Our trip to Italy, when it finally happened, felt like a true celebration, not just of our anniversary, but of our resilience, our strength, and the unwavering bond that had allowed us to face down a monster and emerge victorious. So, I ask you again, was I wrong? Was I wrong to turn the tables, to use his own tactics against him, to protect my husband and our life at any cost? Some might say I stooped to his level, but I say I simply leveled the playing field and ensured justice was served. Sometimes, when faced with true evil, you have to be willing to get a little dirty to clean up the mess. And I would do it again in a heartbeat. Like this video if you were on my side, if you believe in fighting fire with fire when it comes to protecting the ones you love. Subscribe for more stories like this, where ordinary people face extraordinary challenges and find the strength to overcome them. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. What would you have done? I'll see you all in the next story.